Hello, authors and readers, and welcome to this week's video. I'm freelance fiction editor Miranda Darrow, and this is my weekly video about writing, editing, and the writing life. We're doing another novel deep dive, and this time it is The Will of the Many by James Islington. In case you missed our earlier videos in this series, novel deep dives are where I invite a guest to break down a recent best-selling title and use that novel to talk about aspects of writing craft. For example, our first novel deep dive was an exploration of reverse timeline structure featuring Peter Swanson's Kill Your Darlings. And you can find that chat with author Sophia Chang on my YouTube channel. I want to start with a spoiler warning. If you have not yet read The Will of the Many and don't want it spoiled, pause this video and come back after you've read it, as there will be spoilers for our featured book. We are pulling this apart. This is a forensic science alien autopsy level examination of the book, and it does include plot spoilers. This month's novel deep dive, we're discussing The Will of the Many's use of the author's just in time, just what's needed approach to dribbling out bits of world building over many, many pages, rather than a big info dump at the start. Let's be clear, The Will of the Many has some really complex world building. It has like a pyramid scheme magic system that we will dive into later and pick apart. But Islington doles it out in tiny little bits. If that topic sounds interesting to you, stay tuned. I picked this book out because my spouse and I listened to it on an audiobook while driving around to our kids' events, and it really pulled us in. If you haven't read it yet, go read it now. Or if you don't mind spoilers, and I don't, I'm odd like that, buckle up. My special guest this month is author MA Hinkle. She's a fellow editor who does copy editing, developmental, and proofreads, mostly in fantasy and romance. Please check out MA's website, which is www.cheshirecateditorial.com. I've got the link down below too. And for people who are subscribing to my newsletter, there'll be a special deal in there too, offered by MA. So welcome, MA, and let's jump into our novel deep dive.
Yay!
Yay! All right. So if you have the book club booster kit, we're going to dive into the list of questions. If you're looking for that, there's a link to it down at the bottom of this video. So go on and grab it. And we've got, I think, 10 questions, and we're going to get going. First one, let's start at the beginning, where we meet Viz at his job in the prison, monitoring prisoners who are hooked up to sappers. We don't get a whole lot of world building details right before diving in. Did you get drawn into the story right away, or did it take you a while? And did you have enough background and context clues to follow what was happening in the early scenes?
Okay. First of all, it's probably a genre thing because, like, yes, I was sucked in right away. I didn't have any problems. And it's because, I read a lot of fantasy. I edit a lot of fantasy. And what we get, it takes a little bit to learn exactly what Viz's backstory is, but we know he's in hiding pretty much immediately. We have those couple of lines before they actually open the scene where it's like that in media res moment where his father is like talking to him and then drops Viz into the water. And so instantly we're like, what's going on? And then we cut to the sapper thing. And we realize he's, basically on the run from this empire. And so for me, with that character context, I was really willing to go along with it because it's like, okay, he is, not interested in the upper echelon of this world at the beginning because he's, trying to conceal his identity. And so for me, I was just like, kind of like, okay, I'm on his side because he's against this, controlling empire. And also, the jailer character, we see instantly the effects that using will has on the people who aren't very powerful. We see that he's losing his memory. We see that he's a little disoriented, and Viz has to cover for him. And the fact that Viz does also kind of shows off this kindness in him that he will display several times throughout the book. So I think the first couple chapters do a really effective job of being like, okay, I'm going to push you in the deep end, but we've got this really
It's a floaty. Yeah.
You're gonna sink or swim, but you've got this really good main character there, to pull you through it because we want to see, does he get caught? And the Magnus shows up pretty quickly. We don't yet know anything about him, but we get the sense that like this little careful balance that Viz has created for himself is about to be completely overthrown. And so that also is very interesting. So yeah, I was just, locked in, and I thought that the drip feed of information versus the balance of like character stuff was really, really good in the opening. But what did you
Yes, I agree. I was pulled in from the first scene. We were grounded enough to know that Biz was an orphan living in a care home, and that it's such a wonderful care home that they rented him out to a prison. Yes.
think?
And then we see the prisoners there being drained of their will. So we like, oh, there's something evil in the force, and it is this concept of will that's sapping these people, and that they have no autonomy when they're way down on that like that they can't even control their bowels. So this was an immersive seeing. There was
Mhm.
like sights and smells and all bad ones. And yeah, so then Viz is doing the work of his supervisor, and then the higher ranking person shows up demanding to talk, and we get to see some of the hierarchy, and we know uh and we know right away, it's like, well, Viz is down here, but he's not as bad as the guy who's in the sapper, but he is definitely hiding something.
Mhm.
So even though we don't get an explanation of the pyramid until 50 pages later, we know that there is one. Yeah. So
And I liked,
yeah, go ahead.
sorry, not to cut you off, but
Oh,
the thing that really got me is how it starts immediately, not with the cool stuff that this power can do. It starts in like the worst possible place to be in this universe. So we understand it's not just like, oh, like an empire that, crushes people and like, stamps out their religion, kills their royal families, et cetera, would be bad enough. But it's not just that. They are torturing people, and using them to feed this system even more than everyone else. And even the normal people who participate in it, who should be benefiting from it, are very much not. So we know
yeah.
that immediately, like this place is evil. So that I really love that too.
Yes, me too. So, our second question. Some readers describe the early chapters as demanding but rewarding. How much ambiguity are you comfortable with as a reader? Did this novel ever ask too much patience, or did the payoff justify the restraint? And did Viz's first person perspective help you bridge the gap so you could understand enough of what was going on, as he put it, in the context of the hierarchy, without having to do an aside and explain what was going on all the time?
You know, again, it might just be because I read a lot of fantasy, but like to me, this was my shining star of fantasy world building is Gideon the Ninth, which tells you nothing and gets mad at you for asking questions. Because the main character of those books is, not a necromancer, not interested in how the magic works, actively tunes out whenever somebody's trying to do world building, but you can still figure it out. And so that is my bar for like what a quote unquote hard book is. And it's not even that difficult. But for this one, I was like, okay, Viz is, like not to sound like a broken record, but we're so situated in his character that it doesn't really matter what else is going on. We know he's desperate. We know he needs something, and therefore everything else slides down so easily. Like, and because we see that this empire is evil, there's the orphanage, there's the evil jail, there's the sketchy official who shows up, Magnus. Um,
Yeah.
we know that he's the one we need to be rooting for in all of this. And therefore, I was willing to follow him and see what was going on and just kind of let him unfold it at his own pace because, like, no, it's not going to be very interesting if he turns to the camera and is like, gee, the hierarchy is evil. But we don't need that because we see
No,
it.
we don't.
Uh,
This is very good example of showing rather than telling the
mhm,
backstory.
mhm.
Yeah. All right. I knew enough about what was happening to Viz that I didn't need to know the whole universe in order to feel for an orphan
Mhm.
scrapping by to survive in a harsh land. He was dropping hints that he was more educated and skilled than people would think for somebody in his position, and that he has this mysterious past about the loss of his family. It was like the shortest prologue in the world. In the printed book, the
Mhm, mhm.
prologue is one paragraph. And so whenever I talk to people about prologues, I'm like, you probably don't need it. And now I'm going to say, if you do need it, one paragraph. That's yeah. Because then it's just like, I lost my family. They were royalty, and my dad had to let me go, and I dropped into the ocean, and I there you go. And that's it. So we know from his POV that he's in hiding. He doesn't want to attract attention. And he spends 2/3 of his wages to leave his prison job early to participate in a fight where, because of hierarchy, he's supposed to lose. And so we're like, oh, So here
Mhm.
we're like, so not only do we know that there's some people are more powerful than other, that there's actually gradients, and he's fighting somebody who's a level up than he was fighting a sextus instead of a septimus, more powerful, and that there were like people were like, there's no way. Yeah, so I thought, we're engaged, we want to follow him. And I did like when he was at the orphanage that he was like being locked out of sight in the cupboard because the fancy guy was showing up. And then of course they were asking for him, and they're looking for him, and that's when he realized, oh, this guy was at the prison last night. When I accidentally touched the sapper and then walked away unharmed, he might know something. He might know that I have not ceded my will. But we don't know that that was that. We don't know about the ceremony yet. We just know that the fact that he was able to touch the sapper and not also be lying on the floor in a pile is significant enough that somebody would come looking for him, significant enough that somebody might come adopt you. Yes. Yeah. So all of that. Okay. We're going on. Number 3, the use of the Roman Empire motif for technology or lack thereof, as well as clothing and names, is pretty common in fantasy and sci-fi, and it's kind of a shortcut for readers to form a mental image of the setting. Did these allusions to Roman culture help you draw a mental image of the story's setting, and how did they compare to other ones that you've seen in popular novels or movies?
I thought this was a really good use of the trope. And it really, really helped me with the world building because, um, just relying on that image of what the Roman Empire was like. As just by coincidence, I happened to be reading a book about Roman history as I was also reading this, because it just came up on my holds at the library. And so that was really interesting because it's like the Roman Empire is a really unique example of how empires ran. Like it's kind people try to pitch it as the quote unquote good empire because they still slaughtered people. They still destroyed their culture, but they also tried to do like syncretism with other religions and stuff like that in a really interesting way. They let people become Roman citizens. And so, because we're specifically drawing on Rome versus some other type of historical empire, we get the idea of how the hierarchy thinks of itself. They don't realize that they're the bad guys, which I mean, the bad guys never do. But in this case,
No,
they have the idea of like, we have, taken in all this land and we're literally grinding
we're
people down to
civilizing
dust.
them. They even said they were
Yeah.
like, it's we took over this castle since we've civilized the place. Oh,
Oh God.
nice.
The part
We
where
are
they
the
go
benefit.
back to Sus, like
Yes,
his home island is so excruciating.
I
Um,
know. We're just like, don't make him go. But yeah,
God. But no, like because I was familiar with the Roman Empire, it also was the spoonful of medicine that made the world building go down. Because
there
it's
you
like,
go.
okay, the Roman Empire with the addition of some kind of like psychic magic, that is kind of destroying people. And that basically gives them advanced technology that the Roman Empire would have loved to have.
I'm sure they
Um,
would have
and
even
also,
more
mhm,
aqueducts. Yes, and so
yes. I mean, they did a lot without magic, so
I
like it
know
is
they
kind
did
of a
quite a bit.
terrifying concept. Um,
I
but yeah,
think
I
that the Roman culture helped to form a mental image of the clothing and the technology. I did get a little confused by the names. Oh my gosh. So
mm,
I listened to it on audiobook like I do like 90% of the books for the first time that I read them. It's audiobooks. I love them. And I could not tell the difference. There were two female characters, Aqueous, and one with an E and one with an A. And I was like, which one was that? Which one was that? And so it's like, so that was not helpful. And then also with the audiobook, I did not know that there was a list of characters at the very end. So
mm,
would have been helpful. It did remind me of the Romanesque features of Red Rising, which I liked a
mm,
lot because that had Roman features for a lot of the training grounds and stuff like that. And it also reminded me of some of the capital aspects of the Hunger Games, which we didn't see
mhm,
right away because you don't see a lot of Roman Empire in District 12, but you do when you get to the capital.
mhm, mhm,
But both of those, Red Rising and Hunger Games, had kind of a mix of old and new, with some future tech, with people are watching the games on all these screens, and Red Rising, they were mining for minerals on Mars and they were traveling around space. This was really more of a sandals and togas and torches type of setting and state of the world. So it was pretty easy to place this in the context, but just a little twist of magic. And then the other thing that I was thinking when I started thinking about the magical twist was Stargate, that old series, because yes, because there was relics from the ancients that were the clues to the power, and I'm like, where have I seen this before? Oh, Stargate, right. So there was a cataclysm that happened 300 years ago that knocked back civilization, but there are these old relics that they contain power, and people are looking for those, and I'm just like, ooh. So, but I will tell you, no, who's watched Stargate? That was like 20 years ago, but me. So yeah. But all right, how about question 4? The concept of will is central, but will's mechanics unfold gradually. How does the author balance clarity with mystery when introducing the concept of will? And at what point did you feel like you truly understood its cost and power?
Let's see. Okay, to be clear, I feel like I don't understand will that much. But the only thing you really need to know in this book is like the concept of the concentration of power and the idea that will or this is ethically opposed to it. And I thought that was a really smart choice because, normally in a book like this, the main character would be all about obtaining power. Whereas this is like determined to make sure that no one else suffers the way he did. So he gets to explain it in the context of this is disgusting and I hate it. But he also doesn't know very much about it himself because, again, he's ethically opposed. So we can cut, and because of the setup of the academy, we have this whole excuse for him not to use will. And I'm assuming that once we get to him in the second book, here we go with the spoilers, like deciding to cede his will, he will get a visceral idea of what that's like. And explain it much more clearly. But like we get to avoid that question. And like it's okay if we don't understand how it works, as long as we see like more people ceding to you makes you stronger. And also it has the ability to like lift giant transvects into the air. But also it's very clear from that first scene in the jail with the sappers, this is bad. It hurts
coming at a
people.
cost, a human life quality.
Yeah, it's
cost.
evil.
Yes. So yeah, I think that there were hints of the cost built into the system very early on, but the prisoners and the sappers and the effect that it has on all the Octavius, all the regular people, the base of this pyramid walking around with half their strength. The first time I read through it, I got to the detailed explanation on page 51, and it didn't make any mathematical sense. But then when I was listening to the audiobook, I was listening to, and I just rolled with it. I knew it was a pyramid scheme like Amway or Lululemon leggings or something. And we're just like, okay, so each person wants to get more people underneath them and move themselves up this pyramid. Then when he got in the school, much later, there were a lot more discussions about will. And it showed that Viz, a person who lives in this society, who's spent his whole life on the fringe of this, and since he was a young child, he doesn't understand it, and neither do his peers from the elites, and they're all having to study it. So it's clearly complicated. So then I didn't feel so bad for not understanding it all, because here I am, just an outsider, and these kids are getting drilled on it. And then Viz was just like, "Oh, I know that one because I studied that book with my tutor and stuff." And it's just like, okay, so it's complicated. And then I didn't feel so bad for not having all the nuances. But later I do have a question where I'm gonna make it mathy. Ooh, okay. But first, most of the early chapters seem to serve a purpose in introducing various concepts of will and will building. Were there any sequences or scenes that you felt didn't really add a whole lot and could have been shortened or cut without missing a beat?
I'm torn on this question because I do feel like this book is too long. It takes so long to get to the promise of the premise. I don't think we needed 600 pages. But at the same time, like the place where I would think that we could cut some stuff out would be the training montage, because you can usually cut stuff out during the training montage. But it is already cut down to the bone. And the emotional hit of finding out what happened to Lanistia, his tutor, is really, really good. At the same, I don't know. I go back and forth on this because there's never a dull moment in this book, and some of that is like the breathless pacing of the sentences and the first person present tense point of view. And some of it is just like, there's a giant ship battle, there's like world building, there's like giant eyeless corpses. Like I was so like every single time I was like, this is kind of dragging, and then there'd be something
And now
just
we're in a murder
insane
maze.
happening.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Like now there's like giant monsters coming to kill me, and like corpses talking. What? So yes and no, but I don't know where I would put it. Like I don't know what I would do differently, honestly.
So I do think that there was a rather extended training sequence after he was adopted before he started the academy. And
Hmm.
so it's Lannistia. And so I know that she's an important character, and the fact that she lost her eyesight as for reasons that we find out later, and that she's used Will to adapt so that she can still function, and she's still a kick-ass fighter and all these things by using Will in that way. It's kind of like, well, maybe it's not completely evil, but it's coming at a cost from other people. That Will is seated. And so I do think that it went on a little long with Lannistia, and they could have gotten Viz to the school a little faster, because I was just like, oh my God, they did, this doesn't need to be. And then this was summer and they were on break until September or whatever. And it's just like, no, just get him to school. I think we could have skipped a lot of the training with Lannistia and had him train with the academy student that he was at, and then go to that festival, and then boom, right there. But and maybe just meet Lannistia as on his way through his adoptive father's place. Yeah, that was my thought for cutting out like 100 pages.
I do agree now that you say that because like the students we meet at the academy, particularly his friends, Calidus and Iden, are
Mhm.
such good characters, and they're like the first really sympathetic ones that are like straight up interesting to begin with, as opposed to like Linistia, who starts off as so mean.
Yes, she
Um,
was so
I
mean to him.
I wish we got there much earlier because I love, especially because, Calidus's death is the compunction for Viz's big choice at the end.
Yes.
I wanted more time with him.
Yeah. I know, because he's the one whose dad was the census guy, right? And
Mhm,
so he had
mhm.
the dad. Yep. I'm always trying to keep the names are not good for me. They're too, yes.
I'm amazed I'm remembering any of them. There were
No,
so
you're
many.
doing awesome.
I'm doing my
All right.
best.
Yes, we're doing good. All right. Number 6. The Academy setting serves as both a familiar fantasy trope and a delivery system for world building. How does Islington use tests, lessons, and rituals to reveal history and system without stopping the story to info dump?
What was nice about I thought it was so effective is because we have all that training stuff, Viz is kind of breezing through all these things. So like we don't really stop to be like, what is the nature of will? What are these three effects? How do you imbue things? It's just kind of like we get some questions, we get the idea that there are terms to describe all this stuff. We don't really need how to know how to use how it works at this stage because he's not doing it. So the actual purpose of all these questions that get thrown at him so fast is to show either he knows it or he doesn't, and like how outpaced he is by the other students, and how well prepared he was. So like again, spoonful of medicine makes the world building go down. The point is his character journey, and like we see that he is being frustrated by these teachers who are deliberately holding him back.
Yes, that was
Um,
so frustrating.
yeah.
Yes.
So like I thought it was a really good way to make us empathize with Viz again because I think a lot of people reading this book will have been the student in class who was like, "Oh my God, I already know all this stuff. We don't need to
Yes.
talk about it again." Even if it's like calculus, basically. Yeah, so that's what I thought.
Yeah, no, I agree. When we got to the school, I really liked meeting the characters, because and I think we could have preferred a little bit more emphasis on that, the rivals,
Hmm.
the relationships, their backgrounds, who was tied to government versus military versus
Hmm.
religion. um, More of that interpersonal than so much in the classroom with the
Mm.
lectures and the answers, because I thought that was a little heavy handed with the world building there. And it's just like, oh, and then Viz got to be a little bit of a Mary Sue, that he was constantly like, me, and I know, but he was trying to make first. He was trying to be first in
Hmm.
his class because he was getting that pressure from his adoptive father that I need you to do this so you get your pick of positions, because I need you to go find out what had happened to his brother who was murdered, killed, disappeared, something. We don't know
Hmm.
until
Hmm.
later. Okay, but we could tell by the proportion of the attention that the author dedicated to the descriptions and the discussion of will and hierarchy that this was a highlight of the book. But I do think it was a little heavy-handed in the academy, and maybe it's because I read the book twice and I was just like, okay, I got it. Will is important. Okay.
Hmm. Hmm.
Next question. I felt that the first person POV was a refreshing change of pace for epic fantasy, but a lot of YA is in first person present POV. Viz's limited perspective, but if you read a lot of other like adult fantasy, a lot of them is third person, and then like 52 POVs. And like, no, that's too many. And so so Viz's limited perspective shapes what the readers know and doesn't know. And so how does the author use POV to control the information flow? And were there moments there where Viz's confusion mirrored your own? And did that strengthen or frustrate you as a reader?
Okay. So I was on board with the first person point of view. First of all, because this is clearly riffing on some like YA tropes with the Academy stuff. So like
Mm-hmm.
the obvious comparison is the Hunger Games again. But the other reason was because when I looked up this book, I had never heard of it before you mentioned it in your emails. It said in his author bio that he's a big fan of Name of the Wind, which is one of
Oh,
my favorite
yes.
fantasy books.
Yes.
Um, and I could see that immediately when I started reading, even though Kavoth and this are very different. But I
He
believe,
also had that academy though that he went to. Yeah.
yes, yes. I think Name of the Wind is past
Rothfuss.
tense.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
yes. So this one, like first person present, is not something I read very often. Like I don't seek it out. And I did find it a little overwhelming because it's so, again, it's so breathless. There's like, if you look on a page, it's 600 pages, but a lot of that is white space because every paragraph is like one line.
Yeah.
And that got to be where it's like, okay, when we had a big moment, like the reveal of what's in the labyrinth, like hidden in the ruins, it's hard to slow down and take in the glory of that moment or like the freakishness of all these eyeless corpses because every single thing is wham, bam, bam. Every single chapter ends in a huge cliffhanger. Every single chapter raises the stakes. And that's not a bad thing, but it does make it hard for those big moments to hit, especially since this doesn't describe things a lot. So like the thing that really got to me was at the end during the test when they're all on the island. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't understand the mechanics of the test at all because I was just like, I can't picture these circle things that they're tracking them with. I can't picture the island layout, which was partially because I had a library copy, so the map was all covered up. Um,
Uh,
so I didn't have that to refer to, but it was like because Viz never slows down to describe anything, and by now we're supposed to have the mechanics of this test like in our mind. I couldn't keep track of it. And like the test doesn't really matter because the whole point is they're being killed off and
yeah.
also
Meanwhile,
trying.
somebody's in there
Yeah,
murdering the contestants, the students, plus also their
it
watchers.
was it was just so much. And I
There's a
was like,
pile of bodies. Yes.
and like I got the main gist of it, but in the moment I was like, huh? I don't even know what they're trying to do here. I don't get it. I don't understand how
Well,
any of the
he
test
had
works.
like vomited up his own trackers so that he was
Yeah,
untrackable. And I'm
it's
like,
wild.
smart, do that.
Mhm.
Yes. And so, and it's just like, oh, it's there to protect you. It's like, or track you. And so,
Or kill you,
as a horse
kill you
kill
a
you.
lot.
So, I'm on my own here. I think the first time that he was before he got to the final test, when he was running the labyrinth for the first time at the academy, he was thrown off. And I was trying to picture that scene too.
Mhm, mhm.
He'd had a little bit of an advantage because his adoptive father, Alcisar, is that right? Alcisar, had a secret labyrinth for him to practice with when he was studying with Lannistia, but they hadn't worked through a communication system. And
Mhm,
somebody should have told him. And
mhm.
then once he got the communication system with his friend from the southern states that they both spoke the same dead language, it's just like boom, boom, the walls are moving, they're running, they're winning. And then they were not winning because somebody had said, oh, that's cheating, that's not a secret code. And it's just like anybody can learn a dead language, but spend some time with it, it's like
Mhm.
yeah. So I thought that bit of confusion and mirroring it, I thought that worked well. I thought first person POV worked pretty well for it. And the limitation, of course, is that we don't know what anybody else thinks. We don't know if other people are like, conspiring against him and stuff. We only know what he sees and what we see that he sees. So
Mhm.
All right. So, next question. Much of the world building is delivered through consequence rather than explanation. Which moments best demonstrate how the rules of the world are revealed through punishments, rewards, social pressures instead of exposition? And what details about class, privilege, or control stood out because they were shown rather than described?
I I know it's basic to go back to the opening scenes, but like that to me is the core of the book. Because we see the sappers, we see how they treat people that are being punished. We see what completely taking your will does to somebody and why Viz should be so afraid of it. Um, and we see what it does to a normal guy who has presumably served the hierarchy faithfully his entire life. And I just think that's like super effective. Like we don't need to know the technicalities of every pyramid because we can see what it does to a normal person. And let's be real, there's only room for one person. Like when you say that it's a pyramid, there's only one point. There's only room for one
That's right.
person at the top. You don't need to know the logistics to understand everything flows from that point. And I don't want to be like, oh, it's like trickle down economics, but surely
Mhm.
the will trickle down to us octopi and the God, like that
No,
really
you're a
was,
net loser in this system. You've
yeah,
lost half
there's no
your
way to
will
win.
and you're
There
really
is
getting
not.
nothing back. Yeah.
And even when you win, you lose.
Yeah.
Because it's like it really something else that I thought was good is once we get to the higher levels, like in the academy, and we meet some of these higher status people who should be, living high on the hog. They're not. They're all, pitted against each other, trying to constantly figure out like who's more powerful than me? Do I need to suck up to them or can I beat them up? Like nobody is having a good time in this system. And it's driving some of them completely crazy. Like this is adopted father, like everyone thinks he's nuts because he won't shut up about his brother. And it's like, well, no, the system that was supposed to protect him murdered him.
Right.
So like it sucks
He
for
should just
everybody.
get over that his brother was murdered while in school. Why
God.
are you
And
still mad about it 2 years later? Yes.
in a society that explicitly venerates people who are dead and like has a big party about it. Like,
Yeah.
I wonder why he's still wondering about like his brother that he sees in the tomb every year.
Yeah. So I think for me, the world building through consequence rather than explanation. The one example I was talking about it earlier was when he and the other kid were speaking the dead language, and they're like, "No,
Mm,
that's not an acceptable code. You needed to
mhm,
come up with Pig Latin or something." And that, and then the other one was the treatment from his level 6 professor when he
mhm.
was it sword fighting with the kid with the armor, and it
Yeah.
was like they had an avatar and the avatar had armor, and then a tap on the avatar was supposed to put like a weight on the real
Mhm.
person's armor so that they couldn't, and it was just not working, and so he had to destroy the entire avatar
Oh, that was
and
such a good
have it
scene.
fall apart for them to have it any effect. And it's just like, oh, so you really don't think this is cheating when I've destroyed it completely, ripped it limb from limb?
When I basically killed a kid in front of you to make my point,
Yes.
like, I don't know how that dude got
Now.
away scot-free.
Yes. Oh yeah, no, that one was just like, oh, okay. And then they're like, oh, test it. Oh, it works. I don't know what you're talking about. I think you are such a cheater McCheater pants that I'm gonna have to go very drastic in order to prove that I deserve to win this fight. He needed to not just fight his opponent, he needed to fight a system.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And so these were examples where that power imbalance and how people in a position of power could keep somebody else down even if they were the better performer. They were demonstrated well without having to be told that.
Hmm.
Okay, next up, hierarchy and the seating of will. Ooh, here I'm going to get out my fabulous charts and graphs. Is an innovative magical structure. Did you feel like you understood the math and mechanics of the system, or is it still a bit foggy? Did it conjure images of multi-level marketing schemes? And did you make a murder board?
I went with it, honestly. Like I've already admitted I still didn't get it. Like the actual mechanics of it. Um, but I was okay with that fact. I just kind of was like, I'm gonna go with the flow because Viz doesn't want to do this. So like, and at the end it's like it's gonna be that choice. Like, does he give in or does he hold out? Um, and so I was willing to just kind of go with the flow because like it's such a good metaphor. Not I gotta go there. You can cut this part out if you want, but like it's just capitalism. It's just capitalism. You give up your body to the system, it doesn't care about you. So it doesn't matter how it works because we're never gonna get to the top. Like you're never
You
gonna
might
be
make
a
it to
billionaire.
Septimus someday.
Oh
You could
yeah, I'll get
be,
to be a Septimus and
ooh,
like and
someday.
then eventually you get to retire and also your life still sucks. Like
Yes. I mean, you're right.
no.
You're burned up and you're 40, but
Yeah, you've been used completely.
yes,
Like
they'll throw you out like tissue.
there could
Yes.
not be a better like in your face metaphor. And I was just like, okay, I'm here for this. I'm gonna go with it. I don't care if I get it. It works.
So when I picked this book for the novel deep dive, I'm just like, I have to understand this math. When I first read it months ago, I'm just like, I'm just gonna go with it. It's a pyramid. I got that. And I did not completely get it until my second read through, and I was preparing for this. And my husband and I spent an entire hour trying to draw graphs and made maps and we had a calculator out. Yes. Oh, yeah. And so
Mm.
all the math was happening. And I do love sci-fi and fantasy, but I really like it when their magical systems are logical and consistent. And so in my old book club that read a whole lot of sci-fi fantasy and it was STEM heavy stuff, people would get into arguments about the physics in The Martian
Mm.
and the
Mm.
mining operations in Red Rising. And there was almost a physical fight one time about 2030 and whether or not things were going to happen that would happen in that book. And I haven't gone to blows yet over a book's, universe and world building and stuff, but I did spend a full hour working on this. So now I'm going to share it. So, and it is part of the book club booster pack that if you are interested in watching this with your book club, we've got all the 10 questions that we ask here, plus these fab bonus materials. I am going to share this with you here. Can you
And
see the,
I did
yeah.
think this picture was very helpful, like much better than the version in the book. Uh,
Yes, yes, because right up at the top, we've got the one Principes. And they've got two people. And then each of those two people have three. And then each of those three, so I highlighted, each of those three have four. And so when you look on it's like, and then five, and then six, and then seven, and each of the Septimus have eight people. So you're kind of going down and it's getting bigger. And of course, I didn't draw them all because there's 840. So there's, so
mhm.
how many there are in this pyramid? It's, this is the math from Islington's website, but there are 46,232 people under each Principes.
Mhm.
And then there's 23,000 under each of the Didymus, the two levels. And so when you start at the bottom and you're an Octavius, you have half of your own will. So you have 0.5 effective power. But if you really make it, if you too can work hard and get to be a Septimus, you will have 8 people under you, but you only get the useful effective power of 2.5 because you're taking half of those 8. So that's 4. So they're keeping half each, and you've got half of them. So there's 4 people. And then you add yourself to the Septimus, so that's 5. And so you've got the power of 5, but you have to seed up to your sextus. So you lose half of your 5 and you're at 2.5. All right. And then the next level up, the sextus has 63 people, but they have the effective power of 9.25 because
Oh,
they have half of their own, because they have to seed half of their own. They have a quarter of the 6 Septimus that they have, and then they have an eighth of the Octavius that are underneath them. And so
mhm.
as you're going up, so you get to it's a number, it's the next one beyond 124. So they're getting really, the Principes is getting really tiny pieces of the Octavius, but they're still getting a chunk of it from all the way
Mhm.
down. And so that's why I was just like, oh, this is a pyramid scheme. I am not selling
Mhm.
Amway. This is not this is so yeah. So that's I spent a bunch of time doing math with the calculator and adding up this whole thing. And so yes, it does work the way, because this was from the author. And I was just like, I
Mhm.
need this to work. So I drew that. So there, I will stop annoying everyone with my math efforts. But yes, it did work out, but it took a while, because it's like all the people under you, then add yourself, then divide by half, and then you're like, oh, okay. So that's where we're at. And I thought that was interesting, but I also thought it was not essential to understand what was going on in the book.
Well, that's the trick, isn't it? Like you do all this math, and when you lay it out like that, like it's so um it kind of reminds me of like the actual workings of government. And like I think that's one of the great things about this is like if you're that princeps, you're not seeing the, however many octavi who are seeding from you who are like or seeding to you who are, their bodies are crushed and broken by the time they're 40. You're just seeing numbers on a chart that the censor put together.
Yes.
And therefore it's very easy to make decisions of like, oh, well, we can send these guys to battle. Oh, well, I can, you lift this with the power of my mind and not care if it like kills somebody because I've got 40,000 other people in my pyramid.
That's right.
Whatever. It's fine.
Yeah,
Like you
let's
could
take
not
that
have
power from the people
Mhm.
and make like big flying blocks. You know,
For what? You have horses.
I know. I'm
You
like,
have ships. You have
how is
ships.
this the best way to travel? This is not
Yeah,
efficient.
it's crazy. It's crazy. But like that's the beauty of it. It's like you see it in the wastefulness of this system and how it's just destroying people from page one. Like it's so good. It's so good.
All right, we're going to keep moving. We've got question. Oh, we actually have 11. So, question 10, secondary characters often act as world building vectors. Which
Mhm.
supporting characters reveal the most about the world through their behaviors, beliefs, and assumptions?
The one that I really liked is Aiden. His friend at the academy who he punches in the face to start with.
Yes,
And however you say his name, the one who is basically fantasy Welsh. Um, I thought
because he
that
was from
was
the southern nations, right?
yeah, and he speaks Cymrian, which is like the Welsh word for Welsh is Cymru, however you
Oh,
say that.
okay.
Yeah, so I was like instantly, I was like, oh, I get it. Um, and it was just really cool. And the Romans conceived of the Welsh and all these people like living on the British Isles at the time as barbarians, like disgusting warrior people who didn't take baths. So he was so fascinating to me, and I loved the way that his character expressed the horror of the system in a different way. Because from Vis's point of view, we have somebody who was living a really privileged life before the hierarchy came. He was literally a
Mm-hmm.
prince. And so he had all these conversations with his dad about the nature of a leader and, stuff like that. But his perspective on like what the hierarchy was doing is very different from someone like Aiden, who basically watched his people completely slaughtered, and he had no power to stand against it or to think about these philosophical questions. And I also liked the way that Aiden's point of view on like what happened to his family and why he didn't take the judicium at the end uh is like reveals a different aspect of like worldview. Like because Vis is so empathetic. And he's really grappling with these questions the whole time of like, what is just? What is allowed? What can a leader do to their people? Iden has a much more brutal and simplistic worldview, but it's also still like, is it worse than the hierarchies? Is it different? Um, I loved that, and so I thought that he was a really interesting wrinkle in this tapestry of what the hierarchy is actually doing to these conquered nations. So yeah, I loved him.
Yeah, no, I liked him too. The one that I picked for somebody who punched a lot of world building into a
Mm,
little bit of uh, book space was probably Esteban. So when they went to the
mhm,
festival of Hovan and there's a boat fight in the Nanakia, is that how it's pronounced? And he was recognized by somebody from his family's home country, and they knew that he was the son of a slain leader.
mhm.
And they were like, "Oh yay, you're going to infiltrate and you're going to do things for us. We want to help you." And he's like, "Yeah, I don't know if I want to." because this, your rebel group that you have is a little murdery, and it's not, my ideal, and they're like, no, it's okay. I'm just gonna, threaten to blow up this whole arena and then kill myself and make it look like you did it to save us all. So that will help you ascend. And he's like, no, you don't need to do that for me. I'm good. I'm already like it. And they're like, no, watch this. And wow. And just, it's like that over-eager friend who shows up and it's just like, oh, I haven't seen you in so long. Let me self-immolate. No. As a tribute to you, to support you in your mission. I'm like, but my mission is not your mission. Like, irrelevant. So I thought that there was a whole lot going on in just a pretty short exchange there, but it's, yeah. Let's see here. Then our final one, we're going to talk about the ending. So some readers have said this is a Sonderlaunch. So it's like Brandon Sanderson likes to throw a lot, wrap everything up and put a twist in the ending. Did you think that title applies to the Will of the Many's ending, that there was both resolution of the main plot, full arc, while also leaving threads open for future books in the series?
Okay. So first of all, confession time is that the ending did not surprise me as much as it could have, because I happened to read the blurb for the next book when I was looking for this, and the blurb is a huge spoiler where it basically tells you like Viz splits into 3 people, and he's got 3 different timelines. So
he's in the multiverse. Yes,
it did not ruin the experience for me at all, because I was like, how the hell does that happen? So I was reading this and I was like, whoa. So it made it fun for me, actually, but it's not the optimal way to experience this unspoiled. But I thought that it was so effective in the main plot line with like Viz Prime. On the main like timeline, we get to know he gets a full character arc. Like, he has to ask himself the hard question: can I give up my personal ethical principles for the greater good? And he does, and it hits so hard.
I know, and it's just like, you're gonna see now after 600 pages.
After they killed your best friend, but you have to in order to get justice for him. It was such a good resolution. And therefore, when we get to the end and I'm like, when do these other visits come in? And we just have those 2 scenes at the end that are like
wrap up, and then you're like, but wait, what's this?
Yeah.
And then you went back.
And it's like, it's like, what's up with these symbols? Okay.
Well, those symbols don't appear in the audiobook. So I was like, what is happening? Because my husband and I are like, didn't we already have this chapter? Because it starts out exactly the same. And you're like,
no.
I'm like, did we restart? Because sometimes the audiobook jumps around, and you're like, what's wrong with this? Nope, this one starts the same as that one a couple chapters ago, because there was quite a bit in Viz Prime. And then you're like, oh, we're back. This is because I did not know that there was this ends in a multiverse. And so, he's torn asunder into 3 parts, 2 of which lose an arm. Okay. So
wild. And the images are so crucial, because slight spoilers for like the first 10 pages of the next book, but it's like he's basically in fantasy Egypt now and fantasy Wales, or like fantasy British Isles before Roman occupation. And so they have like an Ankh for the Egypt and a swirly like triquetra for Wales, which is like, that's so clever.
That would be so useful if they would include that in the chapter titles in the audiobook, which they did not, because we are reading book 2 now. And so every time they change chapters, we have a 2-minute discussion about which universe are we in now. And so
that's awful.
No, because here they are. It's like, oh, I don't know if you can see it. There's the swirly one. And I was just like, when I bought the book, I'm like, oh, that would have been helpful. What the heck? Yeah. And then here's the Ankh. So,
and that is so crucial for you to picture what's going on
now. I'm just like, which world are we in right now? Because they're just changing chapters, and you could stick with the same world for a bunch of chapters in a row, and then all of a sudden you're on the other one. And I was like, what world is this? How many arms does he have? Who is he
Yeah.
hanging out with? What's going on here? So yeah, just a suggestion for the audiobook makers, because they do have chapter titles which are Roman numerals, but I'm like, stick the Ankh in there. That would have been helpful. Yes. Yeah. So I do think but before we get to that ending with the multiverse, we get to see the end of the competition, and who's going to finish first is like, hey, I want to finish first so I can make this adoptive dad happy and have my pick, but then I don't know if I really want to have my pick, because I would rather just be in this remote area where I wouldn't be required to cede my will, because I want to save my autonomy. And so he's got that, and then it's a bloodbath, and then it's just like and finishing first is a secondary matter when people are piling up, including his best friend that he carried back, and Belly, whom none of us miss. Goodbye, Belly. And he is forced to take a lower position than he would have than he earned, in order to satisfy some political concerns over powerful families who had lost children. That could have just been the ending. That could have been it. That's the book. But no. Then we're like, bam, we're in an alternative universe. It's splitting off from the spot that was a couple chapters ago. And then, so we got to wrap up the plot of who's going to finish first at the academy, and will Viz find the relic, and will Viz cede his will? We got answers to all of that. We got to destroy the Death Star. This is what I talk to my clients all the time when they want to, like, oh, it's a cliffhanger. And I'm like, no, you never bothered to complete the plot.
Yes!
He completed the plot, and then he introduced a new one for the sequels. So, because, with the first Star Wars, what is it called? A New Hope. I will never call it that. I saw it in the theater when it was originally came out, because I'm that old, and so it was just Star Wars. But it was like, yes, they didn't defeat the Empire, but the goal was, hey, we need to destroy the Death Star. It's a planet killer, and in fact they did. So story arc complete, and we got that here. And then we got to, what else? I must continue to read on in the series.
And also, now that you mention that, like, something else that last scene with like Viz Prime does really well is he has that conversation with the Prince of Palace, where he's like, well, I want you to take this position because we have to prevent another cataclysm. And so it's like, we've introduced the fact that like there's another cataclysm coming.
Yes.
But also, because Viz doesn't take that position, his conflict with the Prince of Palace is not over. So we know the threats that are still waiting to get him, but the emotional catharsis has been hit, just like you said. Like, that's so key. And people are like, well, it's okay if I don't do. No. You put the good stuff in the book, and that's what makes people read the next one, okay?
That's right. Finish that. If you've got a goal, you need to either get it or lose it definitively. No,
no wishy-washy.
Later. No cliffhangers before you finish that plot. Finish your main plot. Yes. Okay. Perfect. That's what I've got for questions. MA, thank you so much for joining me. This was super fun. And all the viewers, please check out MA's website, it's CheshireCatEditorial.com. The link will be down below. And then tune in next week and every week when I have new videos on writing, editing, and the writing life. And as always, happy writing.
Yay!